guys had me half on dress back there, so I hope that nothing's out of place. Truth be told, we've been drinking since 3, so temper your expectations here. Thank you guys all for coming so much. This type of thing really means a lot to first responders that are local to Edmonton here. A lot of times with other organizations, that money gets filtered back to Ottawa or all over the country. This event keeps the money here for my colleagues, my friends, my coworkers, everybody across the Tri-Services, and now we're bringing military in. So thank you so much for being here. We couldn't do it without you guys. So there has been a lot of increasing support for mental health, a lot of events from all walks of life, different people trying to raise awareness for all kinds of different conditions and things people are struggling with. This one's specifically focusing for PTSD. But despite all of the extra attention, the conversations that are happening around mental health, there's still a ton of stigma around it. And I don't know if it's just because it hits home to me, but it seems especially prevalent with anxiety and depression and those types of conditions, which is surprising to me because almost all of us will experience anxiety or depression at some point in their lives. Recently, I'm not sure if you guys are football fans, but Andrew Luck, quarterback, announced a surprise retirement. Nobody's seen it coming, but he had been plagued with injuries over a couple of years, and it's estimated that he walked away from somewhere around $450 million. The reason why he retired was basically because he was unhappy. The chronic pain, constantly feeling worn down, was just not doing good for his mental health. He didn't specifically come out and say that that was the reason, but he didn't say that it wasn't either. What happened to Andrew Luck? He was booed by an entire stadium and ridiculed for his decision to retire. Thankfully, he was able to walk away from a bad situation and do what was best for him in terms of mental health. Not everybody's that lucky. We have families to support. We have, detachments running short-staffed. Our colleagues are going to be left carrying the burden if we, pull the plug. So a lot of us just will kind of grind through. But the important thing, I think, to realize is everybody always talks about education. Oh, they're just booing because they're not educated enough. We just need to educate people more. But instead of educating people for absolutely every single thing that is not considered mainstream, why don't we just foster broader acceptance of everybody? There's no need for this. But I didn't stand up here to preach in front of you guys. So my name is Adam Rayner. I've been a member of the RCMP for just coming on 10 years now. I was originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and went to Regina for 6 months for my training, and then came out to small town Alberta. I lived in a town of 350 people, where if I wasn't working in uniform, I was on call. I lived in government-owned housing. I parked my police car in the driveway. I would have people come to my door all hours of the day for everything that you could possibly imagine. Other members that lived in that house prior to me had their property vandalized, windows shot out of their house or their vehicles. I actually had somebody try and poison my dogs one day when I was at work. I was never able to turn off. It was 4.5 years of a constant state of vigilance on top of everything that I have to deal with as a police officer. After that 4.5 years, I moved into Edmonton area to Stony Plain, which is notoriously one of the busiest detachments in not only the province, but the country. We are chronically short-staffed, and my first couple of years there, I worked about 3,500 hours a year. So every set of days off, I'd be pulling an overtime shift or 2. I rode myself into the ground. By 2014, I was starting to notice that I was experiencing a few issues, but it came gradually. I would start, losing interest in my hobbies. I actually gave up all of my hobbies. I was into a bunch of different sports, and I can't even remember the last time that I took part in any of them. I started having sleeping issues. I started losing motivation for day-to-day things. So going to get the groceries was now all of a sudden a gigantic chore. By my 6th year of service, I'd actually been on top of all the normal stuff that cops have to deal with. I'd been involved in 3 member-involved shootings. I'd had to shoot people, and I'd been shot myself. I actually still have a piece of a bullet lodged in my left arm and behind my shoulder. So going into 2016, I had tried a bunch of different antidepressants, a bunch of different sleeping pills. Nothing seemed to be working. Doctors really didn't know what to make of it, or maybe they didn't try, but everybody just wanted to mask the symptoms. It was actually February 14th, 2016. I was on a new prescription for about 2 weeks, and you know those side effects that they list for antidepressants that all sound worse than the actual condition that it's supposed to treat? This one really didn't go well for me. So on Valentine's Day, something I get to kind of think about forever now for Valentine's Day, was the first and thankfully only time that I seriously contemplated suicide. I'd gone home on lunch just to let my dogs out, and they were just excited to see me. They'd been locked up for a few hours, and one of my dogs ran into me a couple of times, and just being an excited puppy, and I pushed him away, and I screamed at him, and the way that he looked back at me, I crumbled. Right there, I just crumbled. I don't know what it was, but that's what did it in for me. So I was on duty, in uniform, obviously with my gun on my hip, and I had to sit at my kitchen table, crying and trembling for who knows how long, with my hands straight in front of me because I was scared of what they might do if I couldn't see them. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually I was able to get up, go into the office and talk to one of my friends there. But it was around that time where I said, okay, you know what? I need help. And I went and got help after that, started seeing a couple of different psychologists on the regular, and shortly after I was diagnosed with PTSD and major depression. Now, I've been fortunate enough to have been awarded the RCMP Commissioner Commendation, which is the highest internal honor in the force, as well as a Medal of Bravery from the Government of Canada. But so for me, I've been in so much stuff over my 10 years, way more than a career's worth. Nobody's ever questioned my diagnosis for PTSD, but everybody's not that lucky. It wasn't that long ago that there was a major police incident just west of here where basically every member in the surrounding area was trying to track down a murderer from Calgary that was on the run from police. Ultimately, it ended in a hail of gunfire. The suspect was killed. One of the members was shot in the head. Thankfully, he survived. But one of my colleagues and good friends was working in Spruce Grove at the time, and she was caught up with a call that just absolutely couldn't be walked away from. So this incident unfolded over several hours, and she had to sit there and listen to her friends and her colleagues out there dealing with this extremely dangerous situation, and she was completely helpless. She couldn't do anything about it. And then of course, all hell breaks loose, and she's just standing there feeling guilty that she's not out there with the people that she should be. That really ended up taking a toll on her. But because she wasn't in the incident herself, she's been directly told and also had it strongly implied that she doesn't have any right to feel bad because she didn't have it as bad as the people that were actually there. But you don't have to actually be involved in the incident to have it affect you. She couldn't deal with the guilt of not being there to help her colleagues. So when Wilson asked me to talk here, I really thought about what I wanted to talk to you guys about. And there's 2 things that I always end up talking to people about who come up and talk to me regarding anything to do with mental health. The first thing is don't compare yourselves to others. Your incidents, your situation, your experiences are yours alone. We are all individuals, and the way that we respond to a situation is going to be dependent on every experience that we've had in our lives up until that point. Even if 2 people are in the exact same incident, they're both going to likely respond in very different ways. Some people may struggle, some people it may not affect at all. So don't compare yourself to others. When I first started having issues myself, I said, there's no way that this is PTSD or any mental health issue. It must be something physical. So I was going in for blood work, checking my hormones, everything like that. There had to be a logical explanation on why this was happening, why I was starting to feel the way that I was feeling. Because how could I have PTSD when so many of my close friends and family are in the Army and they've done things overseas that I couldn't even begin to imagine? How could I have depression when I was financially stable, had a beautiful wife, good career, and there's so many people out there with so much less than me? It just had to be something else. You see it all the time when a celebrity commits suicide or comes out as depressed. Everybody says, how can they be depressed? They're rich and famous. They have everything. When I first started seeing my psychologist, he told me about an incident that one of his patients had. She was a heavy equipment operator, and she was climbing up the side of a rock truck, and she fell and she got caught up on the ladder. Now, for most people, while that might be scary, it's not usually a traumatic incident, but it was for her, and she had a lot of problems with it. So it was shortly after that I really stopped trying to compare myself to others. Another good friend and colleague of mine came to me not too long ago. He wanted to talk about PTSD because he has a number of friends that are struggling or coping with it in all different ways. And he had actually been in an incident himself where he would have been fully justified in pulling the trigger, but he mentally drew a line in the sand, and thankfully he was able to resolve the incident just a millisecond before that line was crossed. But he completely discounts his experience because he knows all of these people that have actually had to pull the trigger. He actually said to me, and now he is the nicest, most genuine person I have ever met, and I can say that honestly. He would never want to hurt anybody. But he actually said to me that he almost wishes that he could get in a shooting himself just so that he could know what his friends are going through. And that brings me to the second thing that I want to talk about. Understand that it's okay to not understand. You actually probably will not be able to. Even with everything that I've been through, I know full well that I don't understand exactly what the person next to me is going through with their own stuff. It's okay to not understand. You don't need to be able to feel the things that everybody else is feeling to be able to be a genuinely good human being, to be supportive and compassionate and make their lives a little bit better just by being good people. So I always thought that I was really good at putting myself in other people's shoes and having them be able to relate to them with my experiences tailored a little bit. But I was completely wrong. There's no way that I had any idea. How do you explain somebody what it's like to just be completely incapable of experiencing joy? Or how do you explain to somebody that it's not that you don't want to leave your house, it's that you physically can't? There's some invisible force there that's keeping you in your house. It's like, how do you explain to a blind person what the color blue is? You just can't. You have to experience it yourself. A lot of times with depression and anxiety, we'll hear people say, oh, just smile and it'll all feel better. We don't need to just smile. We don't need to suppress those negative emotions. We need to embrace them. They're healthy. They're a part of being a human being. And we need to be able to work through the problems that we're having without feeling ashamed about it. So now you might all be wondering, okay, so I don't actually understand what they're going through, or at least I probably can't, and I shouldn't be comparing my experiences to them. So what do I do with somebody with PTSD? I know people actually came up to my wife when I was first diagnosed and asked her that exact same question. How do we treat them? People definitely started treating me differently, there's no question about that. But the truth is, with everybody that I've spoken to, they don't want to be treated any differently. They're not any different. If somebody lost an arm, we wouldn't pity them or treat them differently. We would just acknowledge that they might have to do things a little bit different than everybody else. And that's completely okay. We wouldn't tell them to just think positively and their arm will grow back, or that life would be so much better if they just had two arms. but yet we do that with mental health. So I don't want to be too much of a drag on the evening. Hopefully I didn't bring you guys down so much, but keep in mind all proceeds from the bar do go to charity if you have to, drink your sorrows away. For those of you that are designated drivers, we have the silent auction, a little bit of shopping therapy will help, maybe. But again, thank you guys for being here. It really does mean a lot to us, everybody in the back. Thank Wilson for inviting me up here to talk to you all. We'll all be sticking around for a little bit after the show. Feel free to come up and ask any questions. You can't offend me. Don't worry about being politically correct or anything, and I'll do my best to try and give you my perspective on that. Okay? Thank you.